Hey guys, it's a stream. It's a stream for community by Alfreds, and it's purely meant for developers. But you guys, the merchants or agencies who are listening, are also welcome. So, what we're about to discuss today? Well, first of all, we have this topic of the coolness of a Magento front-end implemented in React according PWA standard. Well, what can we really say here? Well, to start, we need to define what does ScandiPWA bring to Magento. It is basically a theme of Magento with single-page application capabilities and built with PWA. So let's define what does the PWA capabilities are. What does this PWA feature allows it to have? So first of all, PWA means we have one source code for all our products, and we can distribute our product on mobile devices in App Store and iOS, Apple Store, yeah. We could share them on some desktops, and you can even install from the browser on desktop. And this is exactly another feature, yeah, which it has. It has an option to be installed from a browser. And then there is another thing, which is an ability to browse offline. And this is what Service Worker brings us. And you might know what is the service worker, you might not, but in PWAs there is always a service worker, which actually is a programmable proxy, which you define in order to intercept the requests or responses. So you can basically cache them, or you can enhance them if you wish. Yeah. For example, when you get the response, you can prefetch the images which are in this response. This is really cool possibility, and we are exploring it at the moment and trying to implement as in the best way possible. So that's a PWA part. Well, to repeat it, one source code, app installation from the browser, and the ability to browse offline. And then the another part, yeah, it's basically the single page application claim. Well, why do we claim it? Well, first of all, to understand why we speak about single page applications, let's define what problem does the single page applications solve. Well, first of all, when I say single page application, this means I'm speaking about the client-side rendered application. So the application is no longer rendered on a server. So why it is not? Well, because we want to resolve one big Magento caching issue, I would say. So we all know this amazing full page cache which Magento has. It's awesome, it's great, it has identities inside, we can flush by the tag, it's cool, and I really enjoy working with it, and we want to preserve it, while still we are unhappy because when the full page is cached, yeah, you cannot really decouple the data, you cannot extract the data from the pure HTML. So what it means is basically that if the page is cached and this page could contain multiple information about multiple entities, like for example category, products, the user, etc. So all of this HTML, it's cached, yeah, and then when you request this from the server, it's always returns you a cached HTML, and you cannot really know if the categories change where on this page category is located. So you need to flush the information about the whole page, and then you need to regenerate it from scratch. So basically, this is the issue. The multiple information which hasn't changed is still requested from server once again, and this loop, blah, 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 it goes. So it's a big problem. Because it loads the server a lot. So for example, if you change the category name, it could be so you really flush the tens of or 20 pages of products in this category, which is not optimal. Yeah. So how can we solve it? Well, basically we can really make this data decoupled, so make this data be requested separately. So how can we request data separately to a page? Well, and how we can render the HTML out of this data from the page. Well, here comes the client-side rendering. Client-side rendering basically allows us to describe an algorithm in JavaScript which will generate the HTML out of our data. And there are multiple solutions, helpers for this type of algorithms. And there is a Vue.js, there is a React, and there is an Angular. And from all of those frameworks and libraries, we really chose the most popular one, the one which we had experience in, and the one which had a really wide community and extension support. So the people who will be working with this product later on won't be searching for things which doesn't exist. So we really wanted this community around the product, so we choose React. Yeah, but that's about the stack. We choose React, and this is our implementation. This is the tool which we use for client-side rendering implementation. Yeah. So once again, we have this HTML which is not decoupled. We want to get rid of it, so we start to communicate with server with the data and not the HTML. So what it allows us to do is basically to cache each part of this data separately, yeah, and then when we are trying to change some data, we pretty much flush only one piece and we keep everything else which was there already. And this approach is called AJAX, and you are familiar with it. Basically, it's a background request of information and later rendering this information. So nothing too new. Magento already had this. Magento had client-side rendering in cart and, for example, checkout, but it hadn't really been the single-page application. So only part of Magento was single page, the checkout. But later, we made the whole application single page. And what benefit did it bring? So first of all, it allowed us to create really smooth transitions between the pages, and additionally, that allowed us to pretty much understand how our next page will look like. So by knowing how the next page will look like, we might render the placeholders in the places of information which will come in later on. And this allows us to build this really beautiful user experience where you are never looking at the loaders, except if we want you to look at the loader, yeah? And you're always looking at some representation or mock of the data which will come in the future. Okay, so that's about how we implement the single page application and why we really need single page application. Just to summarize, because we are solving the Magento caching issue related to full page cache being unoptimal, we are splitting the data in separate pieces, and later we're requesting all of this data from the client, from the browser, and then we are using some reactive libraries like React to render this page into HTML and display to a client. Well, that's why we're using single page applications, and this is basically the explanation of why it is cool to have Magento frontend written in React. I think this answers the first question which we had, and we can move to the next one. Yeah, the next question is, what new tools and tech is available now for Magento Community? Well, we all know that from Magento 2.3 we have this awesome GraphQL implementation provided by Magento, and this is great because now we have a really cool, really good to work with, extensible solution to write the GraphQL schema, and yeah, we are pretty happy with it and we are using it. So this is the first tool which is available. Then the single page application, which we just spoke about, the ScandiPWA single page application. It's also here, and it's new, and it's ready for you to research and investigate. I would like to tell you that in its essence, it's pretty simple. It has a pretty pretty strict rules and very, I would say, consistent implementations of multiple features. So you, for example, would never find a functional component in our theme because we really think it's too complex to get into from the first days of your investigation. Yes, so we are using the easiest React parts, like the React components and React containers, yeah, and high order components. Those are pretty simple, but it's, in its essence, you really need to know how does the React lifecycle works. So if you know the lifecycle of React component, you're pretty much ready to go and understand the React part of ScandiPWA. Okay, then we have this. What tools are available within the ScandiPWA ecosystem? Well, that's a big thing, because now we will have the performance. We already have the performance optimization packages released. So what does those guys do? Well, basically they are pretty much rewriting the whole Magento and all the places which are responsible for product responses, yeah, because at the moment Magento really loads and tries to load them in proper way. Basically, they are loading the entity itself and not loading the collection on top, yeah. So the ScandiPWA performance as well, in combination with ScandiPWA catalog GraphQL and wishlist GraphQL and customer GraphQL and quote GraphQL, all of those modules which I just named, they are all responsible for performance optimizing the Magento application. And to prove the claim, we have when for example the category page is purely single products, yeah, and we can have, for example, 12 of them per page, the category without caches respond under 1 second, which is really fast, yeah. And then additionally we are currently working on configurable products fix, so our demo will now work much faster, because basically it has Magento, and we have really inefficient way of loading configurable products on the category page. We need to rework it, and we will be doing this in the nearest future, because the performance is really important for us. So we want to make the really optimal solution to both have host, yeah, and to browse. So that's a thing. And next, also the new cool stuff which is coming is the extensions for ScandiPWA. So at this moment, we are pretty much we are a theme for Magento, so we can be overridden by placing the same file with the same name under the same folder structure, but in your design front end, your vendor name, your theme name. So if you place the same file there, it will be overridden. And that's a cool feature of ScandiPWA, and it replicates the Magento behavior. But now we will also have a plugin system, but it will be a little bit different from how Magento works. Let's talk about plugins a little bit later. So now I'm just sneaking you, I'm just telling you that we will have extension mechanism, and it will be very powerful, because you won't be limited in terms of what class you would like to override. You only will be limited in terms of, if we want some method to be private, we can do it. But later, okay, let's discuss it a bit later. Yeah. The next question after this, what the previous was, what new tools and tech is now available. The next question is how React Magento frontend is built. The introduction into the tech stack. Well, basically, yes, the tech stack of ScandiPWA is pretty simple in its essence. It's just a React with its classes, so just the class components of React. That's the first thing. Very simple to learn. It's 1 page of documentation. Okay, then it's Redux. Okay, Redux is a thing which is complex. In my opinion, it's overly complicated. It's really great in terms of its architecture. The Flux pattern is cool, but because it gets overused and gets really, it's really a bad thing to have at this point, because we are planning to have everything class-based. But now we're speaking about the data because, as we all know or might not know, I will tell you, the Redux is basically trying to. Redux cannot work with like elements or you store or instances of an object you store. The object which you store in Redux should be serializable, which means we cannot really have the product like an instance of class product, which we are planning to have in the future, and because this will allow us to create an extensions for products themselves or different behaviors. So this is the reason why the Redux might what might be left later on, but now it's here. We are using it. Yeah, it's only placing the application which is not based on classes. That's another reason why to remove Redux. We want something which will be based on classes because the extension mechanism. Okay, the Redux, we understood it. It's basically a global state storage, but it gets overused too often. So I won't be really stopping on the Redux now, because in the common development way, in the common development, you don't really bother with it. You only change the display components, the presentation components. So let's not stop here. Then the SCSS, which we chose for our styles. It was a hard choice between the CSS and JS or whatever, because yes, it has a lot of benefits if you do it in the JS way. For example, you could minify your styles much more effective by minifying the names of classes. But what we really wanted is something which is really clear and familiar. So we took a normal SCSS and we added a BAM into it. And as you might know, the BAM and SCSS work amazingly great together. The BAM is our way to organize the class names. So the BAM really stands for blocks, elements, and modifiers, which mean all our classes and elements described in the DOM have either the block and element, or some modifier. The block is a wrapper component, the element is an element within this wrapper, and the modifier is a state of this component which describes its appearance. Nothing too complex. It's when you learn it, it's really well documented because it's a technology made by giants, and when you really understand it, it becomes tremendously easy to find what you need in the application, because just by looking at the class name, you can immediately recognize the place where it was declared. Yeah. Then we have this, we started to speak about some organization, the class name organization, yeah, but we also have this file name organization pattern, which is based on postfixes and the postfixes of the file. So if you open a folder in ScandiPWA component folder, yeah, you would never find there anything else except the component dot component, basically dot container index.js file dot config, I believe, and that's pretty much it. So we only have some specific postfixes which really immediately tell you by just looking on a file name which logic does this file contain, and in one folder you will never have another declaration of another component. The full structure is really flat. It's a pleasure to work with, and it really helps orienting. And the best way I could recommend you orient in ScandiPWA project is by using search by file name. So you just press this command P in my favorite Visual Studio editor, and boom, you're ready to type in. When I type checkout, for example, I'm getting the checkout container component, and I also see what is related to the checkout from the global state and from the queries, for example, because the queries have .query extension and the .query.js, and the actions from Redux have also .action.js and .dispatcher.js, etc. You can read about this in docs. It just means that the theme itself is very well organized, and we don't really step away from this tradition of really beautiful internal organization. And finally, we have this override mechanism. which is currently implemented, and it allows you to create the files with the same name, which will override the initial files of the theme. So as you may know, the theme is installed in vendor because it's Magento theme. So you install it in vendor, it appears in the vendor, then you use the installer command to install it in your app design front end, blah blah blah. So here you got your theme in your app design. From there, you can create files with a similar name and import original files there. And on this channel, you can find 2 videos describing it. One describing the components themselves, so you can easily navigate, and one describing especially the extension mechanism and how it works. I would like to warn you that some information in this video is outdated, especially the real contents of these files. There are multiple versions already passed, and some files in the router might have been changed, but in any way, the editing will be similar, if not the same, yeah? So that's the override mechanism, very similar to Magento. You as a developer is already familiar with it, so it was easy to understand and easy to learn. And because it's classes, we know OP, so we just import the original class, we extend the original class with our new class, and we implement the methods we would like to override in it, and then we export it back. And then the theme compiles, and your component is taken instead of the original. Yeah, that's a thing. And now we have these extensions, which are also very cool. They will be based on a really, really interesting approach. They will be based on proxies, of course, but don't be afraid. Those will be easy to debug and easy, really easy. You might even have the extension for browsers, so you can debug what classes have what as preference, or what plugins are declared on which methods of specific class. So yeah, that's a thing. And basically, you would be able to define an around method from the Magento way, but this will be a nested around. So instead of calling this plugin method of around, we call this actually the yeah, we call it somehow, I don't remember the name, I'm sorry, but essentially it allows you to build around and you have the ability to either modify only arguments, just call some your code and then execute the original function, modify the resulting information, or completely override a function. Yeah, and that's pretty much the way. We removed around before and after from plugin system because it was a little bit frustrating for some developers. Well, because we would use position of your plugin in terms of when, yeah, to execute it in order to make sure that you can still fire before anything else, yeah, and after everything else. But yeah, it's we will work on it, and we'll be showcasing you this maybe in the next session even, yeah, because it's really ready, it's really there, almost there, so we are planning. And then yeah, that's pretty much the full stack. That's what you will guys receive when you start working with ScandiPWA. So, okay, then let's come to the next question. It's the ScandiPWA case studies and Q&A. So basically, yeah, some question answer. I will take a look into YouTube in a few minutes and see if you have some questions. And if you have some, please feel free to write them in the comments. I will take a look and try to answer as precisely as I can. So first one, I would like to say that our case studies, the projects launched with ScandiPWA, they are kind of three types of them. Yeah, there exist 3 types of them. So first one is giants, and giants are like the Technodome, like some other projects which are classified. I cannot really name them at this point, but they are huge. There are the millions of products, and those are kind of, yeah, those are impressive. But the issue with those projects is that when you try to measure the metrics or the performance of this application, when you benchmark them, you really find out that those giants like Technodome and others are not really so fast. And why is it? Well, first of all, because when we deliver the project, when the partner of ours deliver the project, we help to deliver it. We help with providing some features. We help by consulting, yeah, and then those guys contribute back to us, and we are really happy to receive any contribution back. And this is the cool stuff, but the not so cool stuff is that their developers, which overtake the project after our partner has delivered it to the merchant, yeah, the merchant might have not so great developers, and they might really break the overall feel and performance of the application. And for example, the Technodome is now only at 20 performance points of Google's synthetic audit, the Lighthouse audit. This is really, really sad. Okay, we can really tell, okay, then 30 points is because they are based in Kazakhstan and the original servers are there and no CDN is used because their main target is Kazakhstan and because the firewalls, etc. Okay, the 30 points I can spare on it, but everything else, it's really about the bad implementations of multiple things. Because how huge is this project? It's really hard to maintain them in the perfect status. Then we have this project cases, small projects, like which really have few lines of code of modification. And those are mostly by individual community members. And today, I was really impressed by one of our community members. If you are here, I will be. It's a pleasure to see you here. He calls himself the Magento Dev, and they have the it's an example of how can we see and spot our community projects. Yes, so he has a site, and this site works without caches, but it works so fast because they have only simple products. They have the pure ScandiPWA. They have a latest update. They score 80% in the Lighthouse performance. They really do great job, I would say, yeah. And overall, I'm really happy with what those guys achieved because they have the sub-second category load, and when I'm scrolling this page, it's without caches, super fast. The CMS pages respond for me longer than the category page because we never looked at the category page. It was never a bottleneck because we cached it. But really, they did an amazing job. And I feel like this is what we really need to showcase at this point because those small projects launched around the demo with small amount of customizations, those are amazing. And then we have this middle-sized shops by partners, and where performance and benchmarks really depend on how long does this partner really work with ScandiPWA. And commonly, it's a still great performance around 60 and 80. Sometimes it's even higher if they use some CDNs like Fastly or whatever. And yeah, this is really cool to see. But there are also sites with 20% performance or 30% performance. Well, because some clients might not require it. Some clients are not really looking into the synthetic scores, which I really understand. But to eliminate this issue and this difference between projects, what we are also doing at the moment is we are creating specific tests which will be run on deploys of yours, yeah, and we'll provide you the infrastructure to run it, just specify your GitHub repository, we'll deploy it and test it for you. And this will allow you to basically track how good is your project in terms of performance. This could be a Lighthouse audit score, this could be a loading of whatever. This is really this will check multiple things, yeah, on your project. And I feel like this could smallen the gap between those large giants, those small projects, and those middle projects. So they would all perform the same. Okay, that's about the case studies. now I will take a look onto YouTube. I see no questions from here. Well, that's okay. No questions is fine. I hope the next time you will have some. Either way, I can tell you a lot more about the product itself, and this video will come later on as I recorded, so you can rewatch it later on if you would like to know some more detail. And now the plans into the future, the last section. This will be more like repeating myself from the previous speech. So the first one is we're doing the extension mechanism. I expect it within this month, and probably with CLI tool, maybe with the marketplace. That's a thing. Check out the Docker setup instructions, because sorry, not the Docker, but local setup instructions, because they will be very deeply upgraded. We will include the setups on Mac, setups on Linux. We will include the remote server setups, and we will include the setups without the Docker at all. So all four cases, four of them, yeah, will be documented, and we will add the common questions to them, so you can immediately frequently asked questions section. We can immediately look what happened, and we will also release the videos for you on this topic, but the videos might come next month. The doc itself, it will be there this month. And then we are working on documentation overall, so everything I just spoke before will be available later on in the document format, so you will be able to look into it and explain or understand why we use specific technology, or why this tool actually exists. Yeah. And finally, there will be a Docker setup which we will improve for Mac. So one of our amazing team members had done the mutagen integration into Docker Compose, and now we'll have the great performance on Macs. So the whole team who has previously had the dual boot setups on Macs is now moving back to simply using Mac, and this is great news. The launch time, the setup time on Mac is now just 190 seconds, and this is the whole deploy, and on the Linux it's 140 seconds, which is amazing and great. So I'm happy to announce all of this, guys. That rounds up our session for today. Was really nice to meet you all, to really speak and explain what we are doing. I hope we will meet next week, and I will maybe showcase you some code, some examples. Yeah, it was nice to meet you guys, and bye till the next Friday.